Right. The secret to stopping CAB3, the secret, the one thing they don't want you to know. Right. Mrezimbabwe tiripo pano pamuzinda wevanhu. Ndini wenyu super galo. Right. For months, you have been watching this CAB3 saga feeling helpless. The president has the parliamentary supermajority. The MPs are being whipped into compliance. The secret ballot is gone. The courts blocked the cameras. The attorney general keeps insisting it is all legal. Virginia Mabiza. The bishops objected. The war veterans went to court. The diaspora marched in the rain, and still the bill keeps moving forward like a tank. And you have been thinking, what can possibly stop this? Right? Pano pamuzinda wevanhu nasuno neni supergalo. We are going to tell you the secret. The one thing that stops CAB3 dead in its tracks. The thing buried in Zimbabwe's own constitution that the regime's lawyers are doing absolute gymnastics to avoid mentioning. One word, 11 letters, referendum. Let me explain why this single word is the regime's worst nightmare and Zimbabwe's strongest weapon. The landmine buried in section 328. Here is what the architects of Zimbabwe's 2013 constitution did, and it was genius. They anticipated this exact moment. They knew that one day some president would try to extend his own term. So they built a trap, a constitutional landmine that detonates the moment anyone tries it. That landmine is section 328. Section 328 subsection 7 of the Constitution bars amendments to term limits from benefiting sitting office holders unless approved by referendum. In plain English, you cannot change the rules to benefit the person currently in power. You can change the term limits, but the change cannot apply to the sitting president unless the people vote for it directly in a referendum. Munoona manje muri Zimbabwe takangurita zviparidza panapa tichitaura kuti you guys understand kuti right now President Mnangagwa vapinza his opinion of pushing CAB3 without, in fact, not of without what, but of changing the constitution in all these amendments that are in CAB3, right? They want to change the constitution. That's what they want to do, the Mnangagwa regime, the Mnangagwa faction, right? So, avasati vasaina chinhu into law. The moment this guy tries to sign this thing into law, that's when he triggers nyaya referendum yatutore, and that's when the institutions that are responsible to defend and protect the constitution will rise and make sure there is free, no intimidation space for the courts to do their job. Right. And here is the second part of the trap, the part that makes it inescapable. Section 328 itself can only be amended through a referendum under Section 328, subsection 9, meaning Parliament alone cannot lawfully approve the changes. Chakalokwa. Listen to that again. To remove the protection that requires a referendum, you need a referendum. The trap protects itself. You cannot disarm the landmine without stepping on it. As the Constitution Defenders Forum explains it, to remove the protection of Section 328 subsection 7, you must amend Section 328 itself. Section 328 is treated like Chapter 4, the Declaration of Rights, which means any amendment to it requires a national referendum, a direct vote of the people. A referendum is constitutionally required. Parliament alone cannot pass this. The drafters built a door that locks from the inside, and only the people of Zimbabwe hold the key. The gymnastics, how they are trying to escape. Now, here is where it gets devious. Because the regime's lawyers know about Section 328, they know it is a landmine, so they tried to engineer a way around it. The government claims they are changing the electoral cycle, not term limits. This is semantic gymnastics. The effect is identical. the incumbent stays in power longer. This is the whole game. They are arguing that extending the term from 5 years to 7 years is not a term limit change. It is an electoral cycle adjustment, a scheduling matter, an administrative twerk, nothing that triggers Section 328. And remember what Chinamasa said on Citizens Voice Network. 2 years is not a term. That is the gymnastics in action. If 2 years is not a term, then extending by 2 years does not touch term limits, and therefore no referendum is required. The Law Society of Zimbabwe looked at this argument and demolished it. The Law Society of Zimbabwe said clauses 4, 9, and 10 of CAB3 attempt to bypass Section 328, subsection 7, and that the drafters deliberately inserted a notwithstanding provision into clause 4.2a to override the ordinary operation of the Constitution. A notwithstanding clause, they literally wrote into the bill, notwithstanding what the Constitution says, we are doing it anyway. That is not a legal argument. That is a confession. You do not need to override a constitutional protection that does not apply to you. The fact that they inserted an override clause proves they know Section 328 applies. Pano pamzinda wevanhu. The Attorney General versus everyone. The regime's last line of defense is Attorney General Virginia Mabiza, and she has gone all in. Mabiza declared the constitutional basis for proceeding without a referendum is neither an option nor a loophole. Section 328, subsection 6 is very clear. Any insistence on a referendum given the current scenario is devoid of any meaningful legal basic and logic. It is an unconstitutional demand. An unconstitutional demand. She is calling the demand for a referendum unconstitutional. Listen to that again. Because the audacity is breathtaking. The people asking for the Constitution to be followed are being told that following the Constitution is unconstitutional. And against her stand, the Law Society of Zimbabwe, constitutional lawyer Justice Mavedzenge, Professor Lovemore Maduku, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, 6 war veterans in the Constitutional Court, Mavedzenge says Section 95, subsection 2b, which sets the presidential term at 5 years, plainly qualifies as a term limit provision within the meaning of Section 328. One Attorney General against the entire legal establishment of Zimbabwe. Those are not good odds, Virginia. Vig. Right, the army of citizens using the secret. And here is the most beautiful part. Ordinary Zimbabweans have already figured out the secret, and they are deploying it in court right now. Activist Yangason Matete filed an urgent High Court application on May 28th, seeking a declaratory order that clauses 4, 9, and 10 of CAB3 cannot be enacted without a referendum, citing his status as a citizen, a registered voter, and a beneficiary of entrenched constitutional safeguards under Section 328. Matete is seeking an order barring Parliament, the President, and the Justice Minister from taking any further steps toward enactment unless first approved by voters in a referendum, and wants the court to direct ZEC to conduct that referendum in Parliament if Parliament passes the bill. His words say it all. Section 328 exists to ensure that fundamental constitutional safeguards cannot be altered solely through parliamentary processes without the direct participation and approval of the electorate. We close quote. A single citizen, a registered voter, using the Constitution's own built-in protection, forcing the question into court, that is the secret in action. Zimbabwe. Right, the bottom line, why they fear the word. So now you understand the secret to stopping CAB3 is not a protest. It is not a petition. It is not a march. It is a single constitutional mechanism that the drafters built into the supreme law for this exact moment, a referendum. And here is why the regime is so terrified of that word. Parliament received over 300,000 submissions during the consultation period, with many opposing the extension of terms and the removal of direct presidential elections. They know, they have the data. They know that if CAB3 goes to a national vote, it loses decisively, humiliatingly. That is why they are doing gymnastics. That is why the Attorney General calls the referendum unconstitutional. That is why they inserted a notwithstanding clause. That is why they whipped the MPs and removed the secret ballot. Because every one of those moves is an attempt to avoid the one thing they cannot win, asking the people. The secret to stopping CAB3 is making them ask the people. Because the people have already decided. Section 328 is the landmine. The referendum is the trigger. And the citizens of Zimbabwe hold the key. Now you know the secret. Share it. Because the more Zimbabweans who understand Section 328, the harder it becomes for anyone to pretend it does not exist. Zimbabwe, subscribe pano pa mzinda wevano. Zimbabwe's most fearless political voice. Now that you know the secret, do you think the courts will enforce Section 328? Drop your take in the comments, smash the like button, share this with every Zimbabwean who needs to know, and support independent journalism through join and super thanks and stars on Facebook. The Constitution belongs to the people, and so does its defense. Ndino enyu super galo. Peace.